Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
I will sing to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
See you, brother. Come here tonight. And again, we are in the book of Judges, and the name of the book kind of speaks for its title. That's just what it is, Judges, because Israel was going through a time where they needed someone to lead them and make decisions for them. However, they found out about it in dire time of need. Now, just to recap, this book is telling a story about it, even though it recaps back with Joshua, it's telling the story between the end of Joshua and his generation and the beginning of the king. So we in between. And as we go further on into the other chapters, we'll find out that they wanted a king. Here in the book of Judges, God didn't give them a king, he gave them judges, basically to deliver them from oppression, because God knew that he need to give them a king because he was their king, which we'll see as we get close to the end of Joshua, beginning of Samuel. God tried to instill on them that you didn't need a king, I'm your king. And maybe he was saying, that's why I didn't give you a king. I gave you judges. We learned also last week in the introduction that you see here that a country or a nation is better off with monarchy instead of anarchy, you know, and a country runs well when there's godly leaders, those who seek God to lead their country instead of just going willy-nilly or having an ungodly leader. So we see from time to time, people came against these people and some terrible things was happening from them. So the first chapter presents a supplementary material on the conquest viewed from the standpoint of individual tribes. Most of the episode, like I say, happened after the death of Joshua. And we notice in verse 1 of Judges, there's a statement made. Somebody read the first verse for me, please. I'll put these on.
Out of the King James Version.
Okay.
After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, who of us is to go up first to fight against the Canaanites?
Now, what exactly are they asking? They remember that Joshua had told them after he had died that this land is yours. However, during Joshua's lifetime, they didn't finish conquering all the people. They didn't finish moving all the people out. And there was a reason why. God had a reason why. It was a sovereign reason, and we'll find that as we continue to go on through here. But they asked the question, who should go up? Are they asking who as a person? Did anybody see exactly what they're asking here? We try to got a discussion as much as we can tonight. Who will go up for us?
Tribes, wouldn't it?
Yes, they're not asking for a person. They're not asking for a leader. They're not asking for a Joshua. They're actually saying what tribe would go up for us to fight against these nations, which is the Canaanites. Now, you're going to hear different names for Canaan. They had different places, Benzink, Moab. The Canaanites, they had all these different regions. So you'll hear different names. And so whenever we talk about them being oppressed, it was a offshoot of the Canaanites here. So they want to know what tribe will go up. And in verse 2, it tells them what tribe it is, don't it?
Yeah, it does.
What tribe was it?
Judah.
Judah. And how did they come to this? The Lord wasn't speaking like he was through prophets, but how did the Lord, what did he say in verse 2?
The Lord said, Judah shall go up, behold, I have given the land into his hand.
Right, okay, so we got a lot of things going on here. Somehow they knew that the Lord was telling them. And then the Lord promised them victory. Okay, and how do we think this may have happened? I think when, if I can remember, when Peter was going through Joshua, I had mentioned a name called Urim and Thummim. Y'all remember that? Okay, the priest wore these two objects in his breastplate. Okay, and it was called Urim and Thummim. There should be an in between there. Urim and Thummim. It's Thummim. Okay, let's look at, if we can right quick, Exodus 29 and 30, so we'll see those words. These two objects help them make a verdict. Same sense what the judges would do. And so they would go to the priest, because we know they had priests, and they would go to the priest, and the priest would have these two objects, and they would, however they do it, like casting lots, and that would make the decision for them. And this was part of the priest's garment. And this was a part of the priest's garment that the Lord ordained for the priest to have. And they had him in there for a reason.
Participation going on here.
Okay, now we're not gonna have class participation. I'm gonna have my pastor back there. It's in Exodus 29. It's a part of the priest's garment. So when you find, you got it?
Yeah, I got
When you find it, just look it up in your deal there, but I want them to see the word in there. Because unlike the God spoke from heaven to some, here he used these two options to help them make a decision. Okay, it's 28:30.
8:30.
There you go. Must have been typing a little bit too fast. Yeah, Exodus 28:30. And this is the part of the priest's garment. The Lord ordained the priest's garment for them, and these was to go in there. Read 28:30 for me, whoever read that a while ago.
You shall put in the breastpiece of judgment the Urim and the Thummim.
You got it? Of judgment. So he made decisions for the people when they sought the Lord. This was the way of, I guess, casting lots. Go ahead.
And they shall be over Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord.
And go ahead.
And Aaron shall carry the judgment of the sons of Israel over his heart before the Lord continually.
And that's what they used when they got ready to make a decision. They asked the question, what tribe should go? And this is how I believe that they got it, even though it does not mention it in Judge. That's something to remember, because before we had the prophets, we want to know, how did they know what God want them to do? You know, the right decisions that they will make. Okay, back to Judges. Okay, we also see here in this verse that God told them, like he told Joshua, that he would give them over in their hands. And that's a sure thing to hear from the Creator. You're finna go to war, and basically you have won before the war even started. You know, it's no different with us. You know, the Bible tells us that we are more than conquerors. The battle has already been won. The battle is the Lord. The battle was the Lord's here. As we saw in Joshua, the Lord said, I will go before you, you know, and he fought wars for them. That's how he was for sure that they was going to win. He just works through human agencies. We got to do our part.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you something, Al, because as you were thinking, I was thinking about God speaking. We talked, Hebrews talked about how he spoke in various times and in various ways. Why he spoke in Old Testament times, he spoke to the people through the prophets.
Okay.
Right? In these last days, he spoke to the Son. So I'm talking about how they got information. We know sometimes it was directly from the prophet's mouth. But let me ask you something. Aaron here is a priest. But there were times when Aaron spoke to the people on behalf of God as well.
Right.
So I'm saying that lines up that you were talking about how they got the information, even if it was the stones, they were still, God was speaking to them through the prophets.
Right. Now it in this sense, it was a judgment, it was a decision making. I don't know what the stones did, if one lit up and the other one didn't, but you had 12 tribes. I don't know how it chose the tribe, but here it didn't say that the prophet did it. And we read in Exodus, it's this is how they made the judgment. So I searched and searched and searched. Maybe one of you all may know, what did these stones do? Did they light up? I don't know.
That's fine.
You
Go
know.
ahead, Doc.
Okay, but this was one of the things that they resorted to. They helped them with a decision. They needed to know who would go up and fight for us, and Judah was the one. Also, Judah was supposed to lead in the march. Remember, Judah was
Mhm.
ahead.
Mhm.
You know, so okay. Now, back to where a very good observation, Omar. Back to the Lord assuring them of their conquest. That is something that he told Joshua. You know, a lot of times we want to know before we enter a project, what is the outcome going to be?
Hmm.
You know, when we go into war, for those of us that are in the military, it'd be good to know that we won the war and nobody's going to die before we get there.
Hmm.
You know, and so when they went in, they knew that the battle was won. They didn't have Joshua to turn to and lean on at this time.
Hmm.
God promised them he would deliver them in their hands. He did the same thing with Joshua in chapter 1, verse 3. Did Judah go alone? Let's see what verse 3 tells us.
Then Judah said to Simeon his brother, come up with me into the territory allotted me, that we may fight against the Canaanites. And I in turn will go with you into the territory allotted you. So Simeon went with him.
That was a good deal for Simeon. Can anyone tell me why?
It was large.
Who was Lord?
Judah.
Yeah, but why was it a good deal for Simeon?
Reinforcements.
Because Simeon had to fight too later on.
But with the help of his brothers tried with him.
Right,
That's what
Simeon's tribe was small.
right. That's why it was a good deal. And they were brothers because they were close to Judah. As Peter had mentioned, how Judah was, all the different tribes was kind of attached to theirs.
Yeah.
But Simeon was small. But why were they small?
So Al,
They weren't always small. Yeah.
when the Simeonites, remember that there was a couple of tribes that decided not to go. They're like, we like this side over here, and that was back in the day. I think Simeon was one of them, and the deal was, we'll go in and help you clear the territory, but once you do that, we're going to come back out here and stay on this side. So I don't know if Simeonites was one of those, but I know the tribe was small. You're getting into why they were
Yeah.
small.
Anybody else want to give it a try? You know, they fought wars before they got this far. They lived in sin before they got this far.
Simeonites, yes, Simeon.
We're going to hear a name called Moab, the Moabites.
Oh my God.
You're going to hear me mention later on about a parental enemy. You know, when you say parental something, like the 7 churches in Revelation, we'll say they're parental churches.
Yeah.
They're churches that replicate all the churches today. You're going to hear me mention later on about parental enemies, okay? Moab kind of destroyed the Simeonites. I want to just take a look at it right quick in the book of Numbers, and this is how they became small. So it was a deal for them to go help Judah, so Judah will be able to help them.
Yeah.
Let's look at Numbers 25, 1 through 14. And as we go through here, we want to take a time, we're not in here, but as we go through here, we do some kind of guided discussion, talk, think about how things is today. You know, now I know he's dealing with the nation here, but God doesn't change. All his people, he expects to obey.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he that was just a theocracy for them. He took care of them. He expected them to obey, even though all individuals may not have eternal life. He expected for them to obey. And even for his people, there's dire consequences when they don't consult him and they don't obey.
Huh. That's a very good point, Al, because sometimes we as the church, we read the Old Testament. I was talking about it Sunday. A lot of people want to disconnect the Old Testament, but I'll take you straight to the New Testament. Why were some of the believers sick or sleep?
And Corinthians, because they came
Because
to
of
the table without discerning the Lord's body. You know, now, but the thing about in the Old Testament, the children's teeth could be set on edges because of the elders. In other words, if I was in the Old Testament because of my sins, then everybody else can suffer.
Uh-huh.
That, in a sense, that could happen today. Look what happened when fought AI.
Uh-huh.
One man saying everybody suffer. Okay, and so, but it's not so like in the New Testament. You sin, you suffer.
Mhm.
But depends on the severity of it. If you're the head of the household, then you can cause your whole household to suffer.
Hmm.
Okay. Let's read Numbers 25, just 1 through 14. Well, really, 1 through 14. Let's see if we find Simeon in here somewhere.
While Israel remained at Shittim, the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab,
There you go, Moab, right? Okay, go ahead.
for they invited the people to the sacrifice of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel joined themselves to Baal and Peor, and the Lord was angry against Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel.
Hmm.
So Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you slay his men who have joined themselves to Baal and Peor, or Baal of Peor. Then behold, one of the sons of Israel came and brought to his relatives a Midianite woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the sons of Israel, while they were weeping at the doorway of the tent of meeting. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest saw it, he arose from the midst of the congregation and took a spear in his hand. And he went after the man of Israel into the tent and pierced both of them through the man of Israel and the woman through the body.
I mean, they was like into it, and he put the spear through one, and he pushed it and went through both of them. That's just how they died. In that sense. Go ahead.
All right. So the plague on the sons of Israel was checked. Those who died by the plague were 24,000. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has turned away my wrath from the sons of Israel, and that he was jealous with my jealousy among them, so that I did not destroy the sons of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore say, behold, I give him my covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his descendants after him, a covenant of a perpetual priesthood, because he was jealous for his God and made atonement for the sons of Israel. Now the name.
Okay, listen to this, and go ahead.
Now the name of the slain man of Israel who was slain with the Midianite women was Zemiri, the son of Salu, a leader of a father's household among the Simeonites.
That's it right there. They became small because of that. The Lord was not playing. What if he judged like that today?
Mhm.
You know?
Al, here we go. Early church.
Yep.
Remember when y'all know when the early church started, right?
Ananias and Sapphira.
They were like, everybody wasn't joining. They weren't quick to join the early church because they saw how God was invoking his wrath for disobedience. He wasn't playing. And people get tricked to thinking he's playing now because he doesn't enact his wrath immediately when disobedience happens. But Romans talks about God being a God of forbearance.
Mhm.
He's storing up his wrath. So you either pay now or pay later, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think in Acts when Ananias and Sapphira talked about it, says none dare not join.
That's right.
People weren't quick to say they believe in joining local fellowship. And to be sure, I believe Ananias and Sapphira were saved because it was immediate judgment took upon them. They were just trying to have good standing in the church and in the world.
Mm.
And if we know the story, all the money was theirs. They could have kept it all.
Mhm.
But they gave some, and they
lied.
said they gave all. You know, what you can say?
I was just about that. We're in the grace period now. And the big difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament is that I don't know if you want to look at it this way, but God's grace, he's storing, like Mark said, he's storing up his wrath. So you are like in a sort of a grace period right now. You are, but you're not, because you will pay. But
Right. I see what you're saying, but it's always been grace. It's just that we're not running like a theocracy now. You know, this was a people that we're talking about right here that God loved, he set aside, and they was he gave them the law, which was never to save them, but they were supposed to be an example to the rest of the nations. And they were in this sense, when they heard about how God was leading them in war and they was conquering, they was an example in that sense that people got scared. We read about it before they got to Jericho. People heard about them coming. The hearts of men fainted because they were coming. They locked down the gates. No man went out at night, but we are under grace, not under law. We've never been under the law. And, but God's always been gracious. Verse 4 and 5. Mm-hmm.
Judah went up, and the Lord gave the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands,
Just like he promised.
and they defeated 10,000 men at Bezek. They found Adonai Bezek in Bezek and fought against them, and they defeated the Canaanites and the Perizzites.
Okay, that's Anani. Benzek is a place. Anani, did I write it there?
You did have it up to you.
Okay. Anani, you write it down, it means the Lord. Okay, he was the king of Benzek. Benzek was a part of Canaan, so we're gonna have different names here. Benzek was a part of Canaan. They went up and they conquered them. Now, in 6 and 7, we're gonna see what they did to this man. And we're gonna talk about why they did this to this man. He was a king. He have a history of just mutilating people, cutting off parts of their bodies. What did verse 6 and 7 say? Now, this is what they did to this king when they captured him.
But Adonai Bezek fled, and they pursued him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and his big toes. Adonai Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and their big toes cut off used to gather up scraps under my table. As I have done, so God has repaid me.
What's the significance of cutting off somebody's thumbs and big toes?
Come on.
Balance, can't walk.
You can't hold anything without a thumb.
Okay. Yeah. These were men of war. A man without thumbs can't fight. He can't handle weapons. And he definitely can't run. And sometimes the kings did other duties. They would do priestly duties, even though they would be worshiping, false gods. The kings would sometimes do the priestly duties. They had to sprinkle of blood and handle things. So not only that they was no good for warfare, and that's why Benzek did what he did to those 70 men. And he was a man of war, so they cut his thumbs and his big toes off so he couldn't run and he couldn't do any priestly duties. So they did the same thing to him. I want to show you also in the scripture where this was also done among the nation in Leviticus. And they put blood on the ear, they put blood on the thumbs, and they put blood on the big toe. And that was to identify the whole, ear, hand, and feet when they would do their ordinations. Leviticus 8, 23 and 24. I think I got the right verses this time. This is when they consecrated Aaron or when they were consecrated priests. Okay. And I'm just going to jump right into, let me just do 22 to 24 so we can see that it's the blood of an animal. I don't want to read the whole thing, just mark it and go back and read it. Good. Yeah, 8, 22 to 24. And we notice what Benzek said, right? He did it to other people, and he is being repaid with the same thing. Go ahead.
Then he presented, you want to read? And then he presented the second ram, the ram of ordination, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram. Moses slaughtered it and took some of its blood and put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. He also had Aaron's sons come near And Moses put some of the blood on the lobe of their right ear, and on the thumb of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot. Moses then sprinkled the rest of the blood around the altar.
Okay, and they use their finger to do that. So when they consecrated the priests, as I said, sometimes the kings did the priestly duties, so now Benzek can no longer not only run or do weaponry, he can no longer do the priestly duties, if in fact he was doing that. And of course they did priestly duties and God didn't appoint them because they was kings of false gods. But they cut them off. Okay. You ever heard of an eye for an eye? A tooth for a tooth? It's called lax talionis. Okay. It was an Old Testament, Exodus 21. And you find it in Matthew 5:38. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That's what they did here. You did it to them, the same thing you did to them, we're gonna do to you. Any questions, any comments?
Anybody?
Back then, it was really, they meant it eye for an eye. You hear that?
That's why he cut his thumb off.
Right.
That's why he did it, but also it was so he could never come against them anymore as a king. Let us read verses 8 through 15 and we'll pick up at 12. Something interesting happens here.
Then the sons of Judah fought against Jerusalem and captured it and struck it with the edge of the sword and set the city on fire. Afterward, the sons of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites living in the hill country and in the Negev and in the lowland.
Okay, now Negev is a dry, some of us are dry. Okay, just remember that. Go ahead.
So Judah went against the Canaanites who lived in Hebron, now the name of Hebron, formerly known as Kiriath Arba, and they struck Chesai. They said
Amen and Talmud.
Hyman and Talmud.
Hyman and Talmud. Okay. Then from there he went against the inhabitants of Debir. Now the name of Debir formerly was Kiriath Cipher. And Caleb said, the one who attacks
Okay, now watch this real close, verse 12. Go ahead.
the one who attacks Kiriath Cipher and captures it, I will even give him my daughter.
And that's his daughter Nut. Go ahead. Tell you like to be the daughter of this guy.
As a poor wife. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, captured it. So he gave him his daughter Asha for a wife. Then it came about when he came to him that she persuaded him to ask her father for a field. Then she alighted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, what do you want? She said to him, give me a blessing, since you have given me the land of Negev, give me also springs of water. So Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs.
Yeah, I wonder if this would have been an ugly woman if this man would have went fought to. I'm just saying. She must be a good looking woman. Did we see what happened here? Who was Othniel and who was Caleb? Nobody see the connection? Yeah. This was his. His daughter was his niece,
Yeah,
and it was legal then.
right.
Yeah, it was his brother's son. Yeah, his brother's daughter. Yeah. So it was legal then to do. Now, normally, when the man marries the daughter, he has to bring a gift to the father. Yeah, a price or a gift to the father. That didn't happen here.
Mm.
It was like the gift was given to the man, but actually the battle that he won was good enough for the gift. That's why he didn't have to bring a gift. But at the same time, the land that he had given her earlier was dry land. Now, the question was read here in the verse. It says, that she had asked her father for springs, is because the land he gave her was dry. But back then, you couldn't just go and ask, if you was married, you just couldn't go and ask your dad for anything.
Husband, yeah.
Huh?
It was husband. You had to go.
She had to ask her husband, because she
Right.
asked her
Right.
dad.
Order.
We can kind of feel it as men today, can't we?
Yeah.
Why you asking your daddy for some money
When
when
I'm
you
right
got,
here. That's
you know, we
right.
kind of feel it, but back then you couldn't just go and ask, it was a no-no.
Mhm.
So she had to ask her husband, because she asked her dad for land with springs on it. Let's see if we can find it in here. Yeah,
Verse 14.
let's read 14. Go ahead, try.
One day when she came to Othniel, she urged him to ask
There
her
you go,
father
yeah.
for a bill.
Hey, that's it right there. She didn't want Othniel to ask the father. She urged Othniel for her to go ask the father for the field with the springs. Yeah. She just couldn't go willy-nilly to her dad and ask her dad basically to give her anything or take care of her, because now she has a husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else got any more comments on that? Okay. Verse 16 to 21.
Verse 16, the descendants of the Canaanite, Moses' father-in-law, went up from the city of palms with the sons of Judah to the wilderness of Judah, which is in the south of Arad.
Where's the palms at? Why do we call it the palms? What city is that?
No,
I'm gonna tell Peter if y'all don't get it right.
Isn't it,
Jericho, right?
Yeah, it's Jericho.
Why did they call it the city of palms? Maybe many palm trees? Palm trees? Yeah. Go ahead. What verse you on?
I'm on verse 17. Well, let me finish.
16.
16. The descendants of Canaanite, Moses' father-in-law, went up from the city of palms with the sons of Judah to the wilderness of Judah, which is in the south of Arad, and they went and lived with the people. Then Judah went with Simeon, his brother, and they struck the Canaanites living in Zephath and utterly destroyed it. So the name of the city was called Hormah. And Judah took Gaza with its territory, and Ashkelon with its territory, and Ekron with its territory. Now the Lord was with Judah. They took possession of the hill country, but they could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley because they had iron chariots.
Mhm.
Then they gave Hebron to Caleb, as Moses had promised, and he drove out from there the three sons of Anak.
Mhm.
But the sons of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites who lived in Jerusalem. So the Jebusites have lived with the sons of Benjamin in Jerusalem to this day.
Mhm. Wow. What was it? Why they couldn't defeat the chariots? Horsepower. And also the chariots had armor on the side of them, coming from the wheels.
Mhm.
And the men who rode on the chariots was good with wielding the sword. You know, and not only they was able to fight them they couldn't fight them hand-to-hand combat.
Right. Because
You know,
can't get close
and
enough.
so what they would do when they would hear that the wars got to start, they would come out of the hills. If they could have kept the chariots in the hills, then they could have conquered them.
But
And
down.
so what? Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Down.
When the war was coming, it went down to the valley because that was the best strategy for those who they was fighting against.
Yeah.
Notice the strategy that they used here in verses 22 through 26. It was the same strategy that they used when they was getting ready to go to Jericho? What was that? What did they do first? Read verse 22 to 26.
You got it?
I can. Now the tribes of Joseph, just to give you a little break there, Eric. Now the tribes of Joseph attacked Bethel, and the Lord was with them. Here's the part. When they sent men to spy out Bethel, formerly called Luz. You want me to stop there?
Yeah. They call them spies back then. What do we call them now? Reconnaissance team. The reconnaissance team goes out now to be very detailed when they come back. You know, they let you know they watch the pattern of the people. Yeah, they situation report. You know, what's the situation? They watch what time they go to bed, what time they eat, what time they go to the bathroom, how many men, how many women. Is the guard lackadaisia? Notice, Isaiah, you're going to the military, they lackadaisia. You know, are they serious about their duties? You know, are they smoking at night? You know, are they eating while they don't do that? A recon unit, they look at very detailed things. So when they get ready to strike, they got it together. That's what happened to Pearl Harbor. You know, that's what happened when the planes crashed at Twin Towers. You know, the airport was very, very relaxed. So that's what they did. The spies went in. They just go in and look and say, there it is over there. They watched the pattern of these people. You know, that's what happened to 9/11. You know, oh, they found out the guards couldn't load their, not 9/11, but not Pearl Harbor, the one where they went into the barracks. Beirut. Yeah, they found out the guards couldn't load weapons, you know, until word got out. They had to call back, get command, you know, and you go in fast, because by the time command come back, trucks will be in. Well, the same thing happened here. Sent our spies, they can go out and look. They went out and they reconned the area, you know. One of the things they did in Vietnam, I don't know if they was able to get in here, is they caught men pacing. You know, they would be our cooks in the daytime, and they would be our enemies at night. You know, they'd walk, pace back and forth, and they was able to tell yards and footage and miles from building to building. And so it's the same thing that happened when Joshua entered Jericho. They sent spies out, and they recon the area, and they watched the pattern of the people. You know, speaking of that, there's a pattern to the church that the world watches. How can I get in among them? I like to try to make this transparency. I like to try to get in among them and be one of them. And what do I need to do to be a part of the church? You know?
And since you mentioned that, and you're not even talking about people who really want to submit to Christ. You're talking about infiltration, right?
Infiltration.
Like when God said there will be wheat and tares among you.
Or when Paul said, when I depart, there will be grievous wolves that come in among you. You know, so nothing's new under the sun. Who's teaching Ecclesiastics?
Nobody put
Eric? Nothing is new under the sun. It's just done with a different flavor today.
Yeah.
The New Testament was written for our example. And if we don't read and we don't study, we're going to repeat the same thing. You know, enemies in the camp, infiltration. You know, but on this part, it was good because it was a nation Israel trying to take their land. But there's nothing new under the sun. War strategy in our government, they actually got it from the Bible. That's where we get the word reconnaissance from. You send out a reconnaissance team, they call it spies here, you just about got your enemy elected, especially when they don't know that you have surveyed their land. And this is one of the things that God wanted them to do. Even though he said he had given them over to your hands, he worked through human agencies. They had to do their part.
Right.
They had to know something about what was going on the country or the nation that they was going to attack. They had to know the habit of the people. Verses 27 to 36 is just additional failures of the tribe. Okay, so we're not going to go over those additional failures and failures and failures for the sake of trying to get further on here in the next 20 minutes. So we're just going to go right on. Anybody got any questions, any comments on chapter 1? Okay, chapter 2. We can read verse 1 through 5.
And an angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I made you go up out of Egypt and have brought you in unto the land which I swore unto your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. You shall throw down their altars, but ye shall have not obeyed my voice. but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out
Mm.
from before you. Oh, yes. But they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. And it came to pass, when the angel of the Lord spake these words unto the children of Israel, that the people lifted up their voice and wept. And they called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed there unto the Lord.
Okay. Here we have disobedience.
Huh.
Who is this angel of the Lord?
Mm-mm.
Is this the same person that Joshua ran into when he crossed over? The man standing with the sword? Who is this? Is this the same person that delivered them out of Egypt? Whenever we see the definite article in the Bible, some Bibles have the A capital,
Yes.
but we don't need it.
D.
Whenever you see the definite article in the Bible, that's the Lord Jesus. Okay. He may have appeared as a man. He may have appeared as an angelic being.
Mhm.
Let's look at just go to Joshua 6:22. Just to jump ahead, let's read something right quick. Read that in NASB. When Gideon saw that he was the angel of the Lord, he said, Allah's, oh Lord God.
You mean judges, don't you?
Yeah, Judge, I'm sorry. That's it.
That's
What I
said
say?
Joshua. It's okay.
Yeah, judges.
You're fine. Just wanted to help somebody.
I'm still trying to get this together here. I got a lot of things going on up here.
Judges 6.
Who's that correcting me out there? Go ahead and read that 6:22.
We on the same thing. All right, 6:22. NASB 6:22. When Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord, he said, O Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face.
Yeah. This is the Lord Jesus. The Lord Jesus just didn't appear in Matthew when we read it. He was working with Israel all the time. He was the one that was going before them in Egypt. He was the one going before them in Jericho. He was the one going before them in these wars here. He was the one who told them, I have given them into your hands.
So
But he-
not to take too much time, but he said, in the other translation, he said, O sovereign Lord, I'm doomed. I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. Is this in line with no man has seen God and lived?
No, he says what you call it like a theophany of God. So he didn't see him in his glory.
So, but why did he feel like, okay, him saying he's doomed is just like a woe is me type thing?
It's kind of like
You know,
I don't want to use Daniel because Daniel had a different experience.
right.
It's like when Joshua had seen the angel of the Lord, he didn't know who he was.
Yeah, he was like, did you
Yeah,
come to fight?
Yeah, did you come to
okay.
fight against us
I
or are
got
you
you.
with us? Okay.
Okay.
So he knew there's something majestic about this person. He's just not a normal man. Okay. So we see the Lord Jesus here in the Old Testament. That was something that they didn't do that they were supposed to do that's being talked about here.
Mm.
And they were supposed to tear down their altars. I didn't have that up here.
you
Yeah, they
did.
didn't
You
break down their altars.
Mhm.
When they conquered these places, if they left things up, they may have a tendency to entertain them. You know, they worship their gods.
Mm.
And they married their women. But not only they married their women, they gave their women to their men to marry. Okay, what's the big deal? Well, it just doesn't stop there. They have kids.
Yeah.
But when those kids are born, who are these kids going to worship? What are they going to believe in?
And just so, and not to take too much time out, but just to bring this to now, because a lot of people don't realize this is still going on now. The word here that God was concerned about, yeah, it was disobedience. Yeah, it was generations, like you're saying, of disobedience, but it's influence. God is trying to keep his people away from, we know there's going to be ungodly influence, but that shows us that mixing the world's mindset
Yeah,
with influence.
It wasn't that God just didn't want them to marry. Like I said, God didn't want the influence.
There you
Okay,
go.
that's the capital
The
reason why he
influence.
says no. Because if they have their gods and you have me as your God, when they come, they're gonna bring their gods, which is no gods, with them. Okay, and they're gonna have an influence on you. And
On
then
you.
when you marry them
Uh-oh.
and you all have children, now you really got a situation. If you ask someone today who's married to a non-believer and they have kids,
Mm.
you know, I've experienced it. Well, how you gonna raise your kids? They say, well, we're just gonna let them figure it out like we did. Y'all ever heard that one?
Yeah.
You know,
Or I've
that's
seen,
what happens.
yeah.
So what do you do what do these people do when they Nehemiah? I can't wait to get to that. They went to Babylon and he told them to multiply with each other, but they married. And like these people was enslaved, some of them for 80 years,
yeah.
you know, which we'll get into. I'm only 65. If
Mm.
I'm born in slavery in Benzig and I marry a Canaanite woman, that's all I know. These people forgot God. When we start having children, that's
Mm.
all I know. Now, when we come out from under slavery, I will come out from under slavery with my wife and with my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I'm introduced back again to the God of creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my wife is still attached to these gods. And we got, what do we do with this? So this is what God was concerned about, the influence of generations on down through this forgetting me. And that's what had happened. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned the Israelite women marrying into the other tribes, other
Mhm.
people. One of the big things about that is back then, the man was the ruler of the family. He wasn't just the head of the family.
Right.
He was the man of the family,
Mhm.
okay? So what he said was what happened in his family. If he ruled or worshiped pagan gods, then that's what that family worshipped.
Jeff, if they gave their daughters to him.
Yeah.
But on this side, if it was the nation Israel married, okay, like the other side,
Yeah.
who does the labor for the family? Who goes out the home to do the labor? The man. Who's with
So-
the kid all day?
The woman.
So
and
what
her
language do they
influence.
speak? And what God do they worship?
Worship. And even now, Al, with us talk about believers marrying unbelievers, right? I have situations now where, let's just say, they have children. Now the husband and the wife are arguing. I'm not even gonna speak, argue which church do you go to? The husband is Catholic, the wife is a Christian. Now the husband's like, I love my wife. I'm gonna let him go to church with her. And it's just the influence.
There's no education because there's a lack of education. It used to be where you hardly found no men in the church.
Mm.
You know, most men are not like us. I want to know what the pastor's teaching my wife. You know,
Yeah.
because if I don't know the Lord, she's going to bring it home to me. And if she's of the Canaanites, you know, then that's going to be influence on me as the head of the household. So God was strict about that. It wasn't about church. It was about you are my people.
Mhm.
Do not intermingle with these pagans. Paul says in the New Testament for women who are not married, if you marry, do what? Marry in the Lord.
In the Lord.
Usually the one who belongs to the Lord get the worst end of the stick.
Huh.
Physically. They get mentally abused, they get physically abused, they get neglected. It's just rough for them. You know, it's very rough.
And they have to stay. Talk about, and they have to, if they're
You're
submitted
not
to
supposed
God.
to get a divorce unless the non-believer want a divorce. And so just for our people here, if we have daughters and everything, and sons, encourage them. Never marry a person who you not should have saved and said, well, if they're not,
I'll change 'em. I'll change
hopefully the Lord will bring them along after we get married.
'em. Ooh. Ooh.
It doesn't work like that. I don't know if these people was thinking like that, but it doesn't matter. He said, break down their altars.
Mm.
If you keep their altars, then you're going to keep a form of their worship.
Worship.
Get rid of their gods. Don't worship their gods.
Lord of God
If you
before
keep
me.
these little trinkets or whatever they do, you can have a tendency to be influenced by it. Don't marry them,
Children.
you know, because Israel wasn't always a nation. We wasn't always saints. We were sinners just like the sinner today is still a sinner. So we still know how to do that, and we can be always influenced back to do that again. And so it's no different. There's nothing new under the sun. He tells us if we're going to marry in the Lord. Unfortunately, sometimes people are both sinners when they get married, like the wife and I was, but thank God that we both got saved,
Mm-hmm.
you know. All right. Anybody have any more comments on that? Okay, the Lord didn't also drive them out. There was a reason why he didn't drive them all out. One, because they were disobedient.
Mhm.
What was the response of the people
Mm.
when the Lord confronted them?
Cry.
They cried. You know. Before Joshua's death, he led the people in renewing the covenant with God. He reminded them of all this stuff. This was nothing new to them.
Mm.
You know, they was to go and finish occupying the land. They was not supposed to go and get wives. They was not supposed to go and get husbands. They was not supposed to go and make friends. They were supposed to go and get rid of the people and get the land. Verse 10, let's go down to 10 through 23.
Verse 10. All that generation also were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord.
Okay, so now we got Joshua died, and we got all the generations that was with Joshua died. Now, all of us here has been in Firm Foundation Fellowship. We know the Lord. Okay, imagine me dying. And we got people coming in,
Uh-huh.
and imagine all you all passing away. And then the people that come in after y'all are still here, and they're having this problem, and they don't know the Lord. That's kind of what happened here. Joshua knew better. You all knew better. But the generations behind us, somehow they lost doctrine or teaching, and an influx of people started coming into the church. Okay, so this is what he's talking about. Joshua died. Okay, go ahead.
Nor yet the work which he had done for Israel. Verse 11. Then the sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baal.
Okay, so you see it here in verse 10, all the generations also were gathered to their fathers, and there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord. Is that what you said? Okay, nor yet the work which he had done for Israel. So in other words, somehow the story got lost about coming out of Egypt, the water coming up, going to Jericho, breaking down the wall. Somehow the story got lost, and they didn't experience it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, God told him. Remember back he said, "Tell your children.
Yep.
Remind them when they go in and go out." And so they stopped passing the message on. That's how he said, going out and going in. Remind it. Keep it on their minds.
But somehow that gospel got lost.
Yeah.
Imagine if this gospel, this doctrine, this truth revert to some kind of worldly way of trying to get people in, and we lose our zest here for teaching the scriptures.
Yeah.
You know, and people come in behind us and we preach to their flesh, you know, and they'll grow into something like this. Because verse 11 says what? When they didn't know God in a vital way, when they didn't know him, I'm talking about you can't know God in a vital way based on my experience. You have to experience something for yourself in the church body of Christ. It's not about a feeling, it's experiencing worship and being a part of. You just can't come in and know him in a vital way from my experience. They couldn't know God in a vital way just from the stories being told. They have to experience him and trust and believe him themselves. Okay, so what happens when they don't know him in their own way? What happens?
Then the sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baal. And they forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were around them.
What verse you on?
I'm still in verse 12.
Okay, we'll start at 13. Go ahead.
And bowed themselves down to them. Thus they provoked the Lord to anger. Verse 13.
Yes.
So they forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtaroth.
Okay, so when we use the word Baal or Baals, That can be a lot of gods. Okay, you'll see that name in the Bible, okay? Ashtoreth was a statue. It was one god. She was a fertility god. Let me show you the kind of stuff they did. The priests would have sex with the women at the entrance of the door. Most false religions involve the man advantage with sex with the women. And the women buy into it because they look at these as men of God. What religion can we pattern that to today? Mormonism.
Yeah.
You're Mormon, that pastor, he wants to sleep with your wife that night, they're okay with it. Man gives his wife up for the night. I don't know where people's head is at with this, but that's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
It was here. Most false religions involve money and sex. Forgot this guy's name. He's from Africa. He came over, did a seminary, and he
I'll tell you his name.
it was in Africa. Yeah, he's telling the story about the
Which-
false prophets there, and the name of it is "Are We Witch Doctors or Are We Pastors?"
Yeah.
And he was telling the story of what the pastors did over there, and the women would get sick, and they would take you saw the conference.
Yeah.
They take them to the hills, and they would take their clothes up and lay face up to the sun, and all the priests would go up and they would be sick, and they would have sex with the women. But by the time the women got to the doctors, and this happened repeatedly, the doctors knew, say, you've been on the mountain, and it would be too late. Whether they had cancer or cold or whatever, this is what these men did. This was their religion. You know, this is what's in their books. Don't go to the doctor. Go to the priest. And this is what they did. So these people in verse 3 said that they did evil. Or not, yeah, verse 3 said that they did evil in the sight of the Lord. That means that their practice was evil. They worshiped other gods. Not only that, they forsook God. In other words, I'm not going to take my God in my mind over here to worship with their God. No, you stay over there. I'm going over here to worship their God. I don't want you nowhere around. That's normally what happens. There's nothing new under the sun. How many of our fellowships today have forgotten God? How many of our pastors has forgotten why they was called? How many of our members go to fellowship not expecting to learn from the scriptures? Remember, at this time they had no king. Joshua has died. The generation that knew has died. And the people right now, they're in a situation where they have an anarchy. There has no leader. It's like leaving 4 or 5-year-olds in the house with no parents. They will do evil. Any comments? Okay. History repeat itself. There was a 5-4 pattern. I got them written on the board here. I think I got 5 of them written up there, right? They would sin. Of course, God would sell them into slavery. They didn't just fall into slavery. God would sell them into slavery. Then they had supplication. They would cry to the Lord. Then salvation. He would save them by giving them a judge. And they would have so many years of silence. But we're going to see through this book, after so many years of silence, they will revert right back to start doing the same thing. They will forget God. When the judges deliver them, they always had a time of peace. Chapter 3. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's do this here. We stopped at 13. Let's go ahead and read 14 all the way down, and we'll pick up at chapter 3 next week. Now, if you read, while he's reading this, I'm going to stop at each one of these so you can see them. Go ahead.
14.
First start at verse, go 11 through 13.
Then the sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. And they forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods from among the gods of the people who were around them. And vowed
Okay,
themselves.
so the fallen other gods was verse what?
That's verse 12.
Okay, now 13,
So they forsook the Lord and served Baals and Ashtaroth.
that's the sin. Okay, that's the sin where one forsake God, they're gonna say, if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything. When it comes to spiritual things, there's a innate ability in every man to want to worship something. Nobody's gonna tell you they don't believe in something. They're gonna call them a high power, the man upstairs, the man above, or a worship at home. There's an innate ability in everybody to want to worship something. And if you don't believe in the one true God, if you just believe in yourself for salvation, you believe in something.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Verse 14. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he gave them into the hands of the plunderers.
That's a slavery.
who plundered
God gave them over. Go ahead.
And he sold them into the hands of their enemies around them, so that they could no longer stand before their enemies.
Now, we're not gonna get to it this week. But God handed these people over. He strengthened the people he handed them over to, and he might as well tell the other people, attack my people, I've given them into your hands. It's the flip side. Remember, he gave them over for a reason. And he using other nations as a switch to his people, not to forsake his people as a whole, but to turn them around so they can do the right thing. But first of all, what he wants them to do, he wants them to cry out to him. Go ahead.
Wherever they went, the hand of the Lord was against them for
Yeah.
evil.
So if they try to conquer their enemies, they was actually fighting against God. You ever heard a Christian say, why me? Why not you?
Who would you?
You know, you ever heard someone say, the devil's really been on my back today? Well, you know what? Sometimes we get a devil more credit than he desires. Because sometimes God will bring people against if we're not living like we're supposed to. You know, he did it here. This was written for our example.
Yeah.
And he'll do it now. You know, we all know in our own personal lives, if we having a situation, for the most part, we know what the problem is, especially when it comes to marriage problems. You know, you ever try to counsel a married couple and the husband and the wife seem like they just can't figure it out? But at the end of the day, if you ask yourself a question, if nobody knows what's going on, the Lord knows, and those two people know. And I just hate to say that counselors love it when they can't get it together because they make the money. All right, go ahead.
Verse 15. Wherever they went, the hand of the Lord was against them for evil, as the Lord had spoken and as the Lord had sworn to them, so that they were severely distressed. Then the Lord raised up judges who delivered them from the hands of those who plundered them.
That's your salvation. Okay? Not salvation as far as being saved, but being saved from the enemies.
Yet they did not listen to their judges, for they played the harlot after other gods and bowed themselves down to them. They turned aside quickly from the way in which their fathers had walked in obeying the commandments of the Lord. They did not do as their fathers. When the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judges and delivered them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge.
Now, he's kind of giving you a prelude of what's going to happen ahead here, because we hadn't got to that part yet with the judges. He's kind of like telling the story, kind of like a trailer to the rest of the chapters as we get ready to get into it. He's telling you what he did. Go ahead.
For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who oppressed and afflicted them. But it came about when the judge died, that they would turn back and act more corruptly than their fathers. in following other gods to serve them and bow down to them.
Now think about this in there. They was acting corrupt, which is bad enough. God sent them a judge, delivered them. The judge died. They didn't just act corruptly, but they acted more corruptly. This reminds me when Jesus was talking in the Gospels, he said that when a demon leaves a house, one demon leaves a house and he goes away
Comes back.
and he comes back in the house, it's empty. The man's not saved, the Holy Spirit. He brings back, not only he come back, but he brings 7 more worse than themselves, talking about demons. So these people, not only they started acting evil, they was worse off than they was the first time. And then when another judge came and delivered them, you know, after the Lord turned them over, and that king died, they acted worse than the first 2 times. Every time it got worse and worse and worse. Go ahead.
And they did not abandon their practices or their stubborn ways. Verse 20. So the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he said, because this nation has transgressed my covenant, which I commanded their fathers, and has not listened to my voice, I also will no longer drive out before them any of the nations which Joshua left when he died.
Now, what command did he give their fathers?
Destroy them.
What was the first commandment?
Child of the willing God.
That's what he told their forefathers. It wasn't don't have me number 1 and them number 2, 3, and 4. Don't have them at all. Don't have them in my presence. You know. But
In order to test Israel by them, whether they will keep the way of the Lord to walk in it as their fathers did or not. So the Lord allowed those nations to remain, not driving them out quickly, and he did not give them into the hand of Joshua.
he did not give them all into the hands of Joshua. He did not drive them out quickly. Now, this is going to seem like an oxymoron, but God didn't drive them out because they were disobedient. But God is sovereign. And even though we mess something up, he can overrule in that. And he can overrule for his own reasons, for the sanctity of his people. We're going to stop here, but just going to give you a little motivation to go ahead and read the rest of it, okay? And see if you can find some history. In the land of Canaan, there were wild beasts. And these people that are left have never fought wars before. How was they going to get trained? The nations that he brings against them are small pockets. They're not big pockets. And the small pockets are brought up on them to train them. But also these small pockets that are left, they're also left there by God to make sure that the wild beasts of the nations don't multiply too fast and destroy God's people. So we see the sovereignty of God overruling their disobedience. He's still taking care of his people. So the people are not just left there for what we see meets the eye here because they was disobedient. They was left there for many reasons because God knew that this is the beginning of a lot of oppression, and he needed to test these people and train them to get them ready for the bigger wars like Egypt and Assyria, when there's a whole lot of people. And this is the way he laid the test and to train them with pockets. Okay, so we see the disobedience, but at the same time, we see the sovereignty of God still working and caring for his people for future times down the road. If you haven't read Judges, I encourage you to go and just read the book. It's a beautiful story, but with the last king or with the last judge, it ends with a sad story, you know. Okay. Anybody have any comments, questions?